Scott rose from the meme lord status to server admin to what I'm guessing next is actual president of the internet.
No, you guys got to stop saying shit like that.
What is going on, everybody? This is Stubbs from BRB Gaming. We're here today with Thor, and Taki Udon is back.
Yeah.
It's been a year since we had him on. How's it going, man?
It has been a year. That's crazy.
It's been a long time.
We want to discuss this Odin drama. What is going on? We need to know. And the Retroid, and there's so much to go over. X18S talk.
Oh no, the X18S. Did you do any mods?
I got some Vita joysticks. Mm-hmm. I got some new conductive rubbers on the way. And then I got to put some tape underneath the face buttons. So those are my mods I'm going to try.
Well, hey, a little shout out to one of our newer members, Sezico. He put up that great video. That was really good.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing while I was like working in the background.
Yeah.
His accent is pleasing to listen to.
Yes, it is.
He's like the nicest German dude.
Yeah,
he's stoked about Handhelds.
He's like, first you must find this. I don't know, I can't imitate it, but it was like really calming. He's like, you might want to do this. Well, it doesn't work. I tried it. It doesn't work.
It's not going to happen. So Thor, any like super awkward questions you want to ask?
Super awkward questions.
Super awkward.
I mean, I obviously want to ask about the heatsink delay on the Odin a little bit, but as far as super awkward, why the hell isn't Retroid making more fantastic colors? How about that one?
Fair.
The MOQ for those is actually pretty high, and
is it?
Yeah. So if you make them, I mean, they're not very expensive to make, but there's the chance that you could pay for the MOQ and then it would just sit there, and then it's not really worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of like where it is. Plus, it was super difficult for them to manage all of the different colors last time. So now there's like one gray, but before there was 3 grays, all the various individual colors. Then getting an ERP system to be able to manage all those orders was like too crazy. So
it was really exciting because I remember you talking about their designer going just apeshit with the colors at one point. I mean, he just was pounding them out, and people were going, is this actually going to happen? And they actually came out with the fantastic colors. That was a really cool thing to do.
I love my watermelon to this day.
I still haven't seen many of the colors that they made, because they made all of them, and then they sent me one, and I was like, all right, that's cool. And I tested that one. But some of the ones that I didn't ever get to see are the ones that look better, in my opinion. Like the green one, the purple one that I just got recently. I was like, oh, this is super sick. Plus with the gray buttons, it's a lot better than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I love the grape color, and you have that custom one, with those grays on it. I'm like, oh man, I know that one's like limited release though, right?
They wouldn't make the gray buttons last year. That was like the worst part. The cost of doing the rubber analog sticks, the MOQ for that is like 20,000 pieces. And I said, you should do it, because it's much better than the black and the white. It can match like so many more things, but they're like, nah, we don't want to do it.
Is that still from K Silver though?
Yeah. I think somebody makes the rubber, then they put the rubber on the K Silver stick.
Oh, gotcha.
I mean, Powkiddy was able to make the gray buttons on their X18S. I mean, can we... there's got to be someone we can talk to.
I don't know how they went about doing that, because their original device should have shared so what happens when you make a mold is you have one whole tray, and then you'll inject the entire tray with one color, and it usually be a close color to what you will paint it as. But they must have had to go back and make a separate mold just for the buttons to have them a different color than the rest. But I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So what's going on with the X18S right now, though? It seems like the quality control with Powkiddy is a little spotty sometimes, and it seems like the X18S, some people see really, really like the build, and some people are like, meh.
I think there's more eyes on this one than there were on the original, because the original was a cheap GPD XP Plus.
Yeah.
So if you already had that, there's no reason for you to get the X18. But like the X18 was always like this. It was just like $100. So your frame of reference was, this is $100. Now it became $175 to $200. And you're like, yeah, my expectations for that price range are completely different.
Right.
So this is the things that people are complaining about are not acceptable at that high of a cost. But
Right.
If it was cheaper, you probably wouldn't care.
Right. We probably wouldn't try to mod it, but now as it stands, it's like, well, this thing plays GameCube and it's kind of awesome. I mean, I'm digging it, but I can't get into the L2R2. It's too far of a reach for me.
Yeah, and not. I mean, they were kind of limited because they already had this mold, so they can't add L3 because there's no space. And like the German guy did in his video, the screw holes don't even match up correctly, and even if they did, sometimes the signals won't send. So you really can't just make those kind of changes. That's kind of why the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus doesn't have L3 because
Right.
I mean, they could have, technically they should have, but you would have had the same situation where the screw holes don't match up in in all of the spots. It would just be like one screw for the whole thing.
That would drive someone crazy.
The second stick being digital was because they didn't have the pin on the 6580 for it to be full analog. And then throwing on an analog to digital converter or a digital to analog converter would have had to pull constantly, so it would have drained the battery even more.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as we can get L3 R3 in the software as like a mappable button to volume up, volume down, something like that. Black Seraph on the X18, I think he's putting it to like start and select, but you have to hold them for an extended period of time. Is that right, Thor?
That sounds about right. I know there's some discussion about the correct button combo for everything right now.
Right.
Because we had Retroid, we had the long press of the home, which worked out, but they had two different implementations of the mouse mode with the touch mode and the mouse mode, and then the mixed mode, and it confused a lot of people. So
it started getting too crazy there.
Yeah,
all those different modes
with all the docked stuff, because you are occasionally going to need a mouse mode on a docked console. Even if you're using an Xbox controller, that they would allow users to define the button combo themselves, sort of like RetroArch with how you go into the pause menu. I would hope. Who knows?
Expectations versus reality. Right. Set in there for
separate subject. Thor, I see you're having a beer right now. I totally should have brought one.
You should have gotten a beer.
That missed opportunity, and that's on me. Okay, Taki, I got to ask you, man, while we have you here. All right, this 45-day delay, I see people kind of starting a stir over it on the IGG, and I see on QQ...
It's a potential 45-day delay.
Right. I would rather them take the extra time to make a quality heat dissipation.
No, you guys got to stop saying shit like that, because that gives... I'm seriously like...
Please correct us.
You need to stop doing that. I know people keep saying this, like, I would rather them do this so that way I can get this, but it's not like a zero-sum situation. The more you allow to happen by being so, like, I don't know if it's like complacent or
amiable,
congenial,
you will make a new reality where it takes even longer to get stuff done because people are not up in arms. Like that's it. That's what's going to end up happening. So whenever I see that, I'm like, stop saying that. You need to be angry.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed that a little bit with you saying way back in the day, you need to say out loud, the software needs to be good or I won't buy it. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Well, you've always been defending, it feels like, Ein time and time again. So now you're like kind of switching a bit, like we need to be harder on them to get the product to come, or otherwise they're going to slack.
Is it that, or is it just realism? Just saying this is how this works. I think maybe.
I don't know, because like when the timelines were made, the only real one that was an iffy situation was the Odin Lite, and I actually asked the engineer directly when they were going to use the D900 or they were going to use the 1000C. I said, "Can you have this done, like no bullshit, before Christmas?" And he said, so when it was the D1000C, he said, "We're going to need some direct work with MTK on this from MTK in Taiwan, because we've never worked with this chip before, and we don't have the ability to just like reuse something that we've already done. So as long as we can get that from them, then we can definitely meet it." And then when I was testing the D1000C and I was like, "This is not really that good," for some reason there's a story about the D1000C that I don't even know about. It was used by LG. No one else used it. It seems like they made it even worse than it should have been on paper because it underperforms the specs that are given. And I don't know if it's because it's like a really shit grade D1000.
Yeah.
And LG never got to investigate it because they kind of closed their division too early.
Yeah.
But all of the chips that LG was supposed to use kind of just went back into the market. So they needed to find somebody to use those. And it was like a great opportunity because you can get a D1000C for like a bargain. And if it could perform as well as it should have, then you'd have something great there. But MTK does like really, really funny stuff. That the guy was like, MTK. I read somebody that said that. I read a comment from somebody that said this, where they said, MTK has SKUs at every Delta or something like that. They have chips for every single step that you could want. They just have so many different SKUs. He said, actually, we just make one SKU and then we just do stuff to make it worse, to make other SKUs. He's like, we're not out there trying to make like 10 different chips. He's like, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We just make one and then we just like, you can do like a fuse. You can let off a fuse in the chip and it will destroy parts of the chip to make it worse. So he's like, we'll just make one chip and then we'll just let off some fuses to make it worse.
What the actual?
So he's like, because I was asking, can we re-unlock all of the stuff that was disabled on the 1000C to make it into a 1000? Like, it's not going to do anything to your business, and this would be helping you guys out because you have this stock because LG is gone. He's like, I don't know how far we went with this. Like, maybe we could have just done it in software, but if we let off the electronic fuses, like, there's no way you can come back from the destruction that we caused.
Dude, you're talking about some back alley deals there. That's
I was
amazing.
Like, this is kind of crazy because some companies actually do make different SKUs and they're completely different. They have completely different internal components. But for the D1000 line, they made 4 chips out of the same chip,
and then just disabled parts of it.
Yeah, they just disabled stuff, and like the price difference between those same exact silicon chip that was made could be like $50. It's
per
just funny
chip?
Per chip. Like,
That's crazy.
Completely nuked into existence to like the top.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So when they changed to the D900, and he said, oh yeah, if you change to the D900, no problem. We
no fuses.
Definitely can do that before. We'll have it done in like the middle of November. And I said, okay, so do you have any D900 products that I can evaluate to see if your software is decent? And he was like, yeah, no, we don't have anything that you can evaluate right now because they're all kind of being in mass production. And I was like,
oh no.
All right, just gonna take this guy at his word. And I guess everything was above board because they're on track to meet the deadline that they said, which was
good.
He said like around November 15th. So they have the PCB. This is like separate to the heatsink and everything. So the D900 has a PCB. It works. It powers on. While we were just talking, because I got this from the mail yesterday, I asked AYN to ask the board manufacturer how many engineering boards that they made, because you can make a small amount or you can make a comfortable margin, and if you made a comfortable margin, then you have extras. So I said, do you have extras, and can I get one, and can I get the SDK? And he said, we made 30, you can have 2, like AYN can have 2, and then AYN can give me 1.
Right.
So they mailed me one yesterday with the source code inside a 64 gigabyte SD card inside the SIM card tray.
Was it like a 40 gigabyte file or something?
It's 32 gigabytes, like compressed with some crazy algorithm I've never heard of. So I think this is gonna be like 100 gigs when it's all unpacked. But I opened up one of my CNC Odins, and well, first of all, I connected it to HDMI out. So HDMI doesn't work right now on it. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping that it did, so I could just like mess around with a USB mouse. So that doesn't work. So I thought the board was broken. So So I opened up the Odin device, ripped out the 845 board, put this one in, connected the battery and LCD cable in it, and it works.
Cool.
That is good to know.
So that's unexpected.
First try. Okay.
MTK has a really bad track record with having mainline kernel support for everything. I mean, their GPUs are usually
you won't have mainline, but you can.
Yeah.
You don't have to have mainline to be able to use Linux.
Right.
It's
Right.
nice too, but if your goal is I need to have mainline or nothing, then you won't have anything.
But the porting procedure to get from Android, to like a Helium, I think, or like an Ubuntu Touch situation where you can run Linux apps and stuff like that. Man, that's a process. That's a whole thing.
It's easier now than it was before.
Right.
Because now they have a GSI Ubuntu Touch. So you just take your source code with your device tree, you make a new boot image, you flash the GSI Ubuntu Touch, and then you cross your fingers, and if you're lucky, it will boot up with just that amount of work.
Yeah, I've hard soldered pretty much every device every manufacturer has sent me, because we always so I can get UART, right? So I can pull logs and everything for booting. And man, oh man, it's so hit or miss with all these devices. Even with the 3326 devices, the RK3326 devices, we have stuff that boots so freaking easy, like on the Gameforce for our Android distro, right? And then, man, getting the 351M and P working together, like getting on the same image, that was a nightmare. So I really hope that the community support for MTK devices keeps increasing, because their Dimensity series chips are really cool.
Yeah, definitely. The power is there for this.
Taki, do you know what inspired them to put the Wi-Fi AX, the Wi-Fi 6 in the Lite?
As far as I understand, it's internal Wi-Fi. So the D900 supports. 845 has the ability to use an external chip for a mobile connectivity, and I think it can also make the Wi-Fi a higher spec. But it added like this box on the back of Odin, and it looked really ugly.
Okay, so you plug it into your dock maybe for the Odin Pro, and you got your 5 gigahertz for streaming or something.
6 gigahertz, because it comes with 5 already. Yeah.
Well, shit. I need that beer.
It's a lot of specs, man. There's a lot of specs to track, and I think people get really confused over Wi-Fi in particular, and then what makes Snapdragon chips for this situation higher or lower. There was a lot of back and forth about the 865 with the Switch games and the 835 as well, and I mean, we speculated for 10 months almost on what was going to be in the Odin back when it was the 199.
Oh yeah. We talked endlessly on the podcast. Maybe it's going to be this. It's going to be this. Yeah. And then the reality of it was cool what it came out to be. And you have all these different SKUs. Do I get like the super early bird, super early bird?
The secret links.
I couldn't not buy 2 Odins. I have to buy one from each tier. Oh, thank you. My wife just brought me a beer. That's so nice. Thank you.
That was lovely.
Well timed.
So there was so much speculation over it. What made them settle on the 845?
I don't know that you can get anything. I mean, somebody probably can. There's always like the will, where there's a will, there's a way. And and I would always say you must be able to find somebody to get X chip. And they'd be like, no, we asked like 4 people and we can't get it. And I was like, did you ask 10 people? Because maybe those other 6 can get it. And they won't like do that extra work. So if they find that they could get this one in the first 4 and the company that they were going to work with is like agreeable with them, then they're like, okay, let's stop looking. But like I would just personally keep looking to see if there was anything else to get. And I don't know to this day if there's anything else that they could have used that's better. The company that the company that is providing the 845 chips has 865, but they only had 865 like 1 month ago, and it's super expensive. It's impossible to do.
Yikes! Yeah,
at any reasonable delta of price versus performance, you'd really have to just go to MTK. It's Qualcomm has like really stupid license prices and stuff like that. It's like really not feasible.
Did they think about going to MTK for like the 1200 or 1100?
Maybe 2000 was thought about, but to be able to get the 2000 is too far down the line, and they really wanted to like fire a gun. I mean, a lot of the people when they did the preview page and people are like, "Oh my god, they're changing the thing, they're changing everything in the campaign," and you're like, "No, it was a preview page. The preview page can change."
Yeah.
And all of that worrying was for nothing, because like they so far, at least, I have nothing bad to say about the company that is manufacturing the PCB for the D900 Lite, because they actually did meet their timeline. At first, they were like going slow as hell doing the PCB design, and I was like, I don't understand how this is taking so long. If you guys already have experience with this, it should just be like rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, it's too many components on this board. It's too complicated, blah, blah, blah. I thought they were just like, making it up, but it turns out that they weren't. They actually did end up.
Good.
I'm knocking on my wood desk as I'm saying this, because
I'll knock too,
because everybody just knocked. Because I don't know.
Please give us our Odins.
I don't know if the Lite could run into some snags or anything. Right now, the touch works on firmware that I don't have on this board. Right now, the screen can power on, and I can use USB, which is all I wanted. I actually also wanted HDMI to work so I could do screen captures.
Yeah.
But for some reason it's not working right now, which kind of throws a wrench in my plans. So if I wanted to make a video on this, I would need to connect it to a Type-C dock to get power delivery, and then use a USB controller or a Bluetooth controller to connect to the device and just record the device with the control boards not working because they're not configured yet.
Would you have to intercept the signal, or are you talking about like actually filming the device?
Just filming the device's screen, just to say like it is actually in the device now. It's just the controls don't work. It's the same thing as me like filming Windows on the A45. The screen works. Oh, except in that case, the touchscreen works. So it's just like everything is the same except the touchscreen doesn't work on my firmware, and the controls don't work because they're not configured yet. But the chip is actually in there.
If you felt like sending an extra unit to some custom firmware guys, like maybe Thor and Turtle, I know Lineage personally drives you crazy, man, but we're still we're going to make it on every device no matter what, and we're not too sorry. We just like to fuck around. We like to tinker, man. We have to see like, can you make this work on this? And it's not supposed to.
If people could see the DMs between me and all the other firmware developers just in RH, right? Like Sebian and Seraph and Turtle and No Time, dude, it's nonstop. It's eternal. We just sit there and tinker and fuck around and tinker and tinker and tinker on all these devices. Like I got a Z Pocket game, right? The original Snapdragon 800 device, right? And I'm sitting here. I got it in. I bought it aftermarket, obviously. And I'm like, oh man, should I try to put Lineage on this? I don't know. I probably should, but I probably shouldn't. Oh, it's so stupid. Should I do it? So when we hear, Snapdragon 845, right? First thing we think is, we should totally put Lineage on this and then Linux,
Yeah, every OS, and then you can fix the HDMI issue and a whole slew of things. Mouse mode.
Yeah, what do you think about the mouse mode stuff, Taki? Because that seems to be like an eternal background drama within the Android gaming community.
Oh my god! Now that we have now that there's a touchscreen, at least that chapter is pointless. The sad part is the original Retroid Pocket 2 almost did have a touchscreen, and the only reason why it didn't have a touchscreen was because it was going to add like a few dollars to the cost, and at that time the programmers that were working on it weren't like familiar enough with doing screen configuration for the touch panel, so they kind of just made it simpler and didn't do it. And I don't know if we were living in the reality where that would have happened, if things would have been different, but then we definitely wouldn't have had mouse mode or any of that, because there'd be no point.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't know about the FPGA converter that's in the Retroid Pocket 2 and what a big deal it was for the hardware designers to design it that way. So because the way screens work, they wanted to remove screen tearing, right? By using a completely different screen. So they pass the video signal through an FPGA, right? And then to the screen, which sounds fine until you try to mess with it in any custom firmware, and then it screws you over.
The real thing about the FPGA is the 6580 can't display. It can't power a MIPI screen with a resolution of 640 by 480. So they need to send a signal from the board with a higher aspect ratio, and then use the FPGA to crop all of the black off, all of the black bars off. But then you're left with the actual, video signal in the middle. It would kind of be like if you had a TV and you did picture in picture. The picture in picture that you see in the corner is what is actually shown on the Retroid Pocket 2, but the video signal on the board is the entire screen that you have, where everything else black.
When we were working on recovery for Lineage, right? I'm just getting a recovery. Oh my gosh, because there's no way.
Travesty.
There's no way to set the buffer for it,
Yeah.
So you have to manually tell it to output in the full like phone screen vertical signal, and then tell it exactly how to crop it. Man, that was a pain in the butt to get it done. I'm still not quite sure how Turtle got that done. So props to him, but he absolutely did it. Whereas with Android, you can send a little command and have it resize, and it's perfect.
Yeah. WM size.
Yeah, WM size, exactly. Yeah. So, well, geez, OP, we've got the Snapdragon 845 coming in the Odin Pro, and we've got the Dimensity 900 from MediaTek in the Lite. So is you keep saying AYN, it's AYN and not IN, right?
Yeah, people are saying IN, and I've never said that in my entire life. Never, and they don't even say it either.
All right. So
AYN, okay.
So AYN made the decision to make two different versions of this. What do you know what got into him to do that?
There was an idea that, in hindsight, it is kind of meaningless, but there was an idea that there was going to be a real big price war between them and some like other company. This is before the KTR1 guy changed his chip for like the fourth time to 845. But there was an idea that GPD was going to go for broke on their G95, and they were going, and they should have been able to price their device cheaper than the 845 because their chip is a lot cheaper. It's like $40 less for just the just for the chipset. So when you're faced with like potentially losing all of the investment that you put in for a year, they could just say, we're going to cut our losses and completely just undercut the 845. And there's no real room that they could have gone with the normal Odin to be able to win that battle. And so they're faced with the problem of, if Qualcomm increases the prices on this chip due to the shortage, like, we absolutely have no ball to throw in this game. Like, we would just be out. So you need to find a backup chip. And there was always going to be an Odin Lite. The plan was always to try to find something to be an Odin Lite, even from like let's say like 20 months ago. There was always supposed to be an Odin Lite. And the problem was they couldn't find a decent enough chip to be an Odin Lite, to be like a, Batman to the Robin situation.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting because the Odin Lite actually has a lot of things that are better than the 845, and then the 845 also has a lot of things that are better than the Odin Lite. But in some like everyday situations, like maybe the Odin Lite is the better of the choices. Whereas with the D1000C, that was never the case. Like, it is worse in everything. So that was kind of just like, it was just kind of happenstance. Like, somebody had like 1000Cs and they were like, hey, we've got the 1000C from LG. LG's like RIP right now. So do you want to use it? And they were like 1000. That's so crazy. But they didn't. They were originally told it was D1000. So you have to understand how this went. And this is actually like this is on MTK. It's not on them. The sales manager said we have D1000, and then so they were having that conversation. Then they were feeding me like they were like, oh hey, we just talked to them and we got the D1000. I was like, you got the D1000? Like that's actually really good.
Yeah.
And they're like, I know. I said, are you sure it's the D1000? I'm like going crazy because this is like a bigger upgrade than I would have ever expected for the Odin Lite.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, sure. They're sure it's D1000. They're positive. They even gave them the model number. Mm-hmm. Then they were like, no, it's the D1000L. And I'm like, all right, that's a little bit worse, but it's still decent enough. And when they were having a meeting, the sales manager of MTK in China, he said, well, we're positive it's the D1000L. And I said it's impossible for it to be the D1000L because I can look up this LG phone, I can look up their benchmarks. It doesn't perform like the D1000 should. He's like, no, it's not. He kept giving this model number. And I would look up the model number on Geekbench and I would show him it is not the same SKU. And he was like, yeah, it is. You don't know what you're talking about. And then I would look up the SKU for the D1000C and I would show him this is what the LG has. You can see it on Geekbench. He's like, there's no way it's that bad. There's no way. We wouldn't make it that bad. We wouldn't do this. And then he didn't really know that they smacked the Nerf bat too hard on the D1000 to make the D1000C that it was just so bad.
With their E-fuse blowing?
Yeah, just blowing way too many E-fuses. Because this is what he said. This is what he said. He said the D1000C should be better than the G95 because the GPU is better. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, it could be better, but there's many cores for the GPU. So if the original D1000 had like 12 core GPU and you E-fused like 10 of them, you still have that same GPU, but it is garbage now.
Right.
And he didn't know how many of those cores had been disabled, but it actually turns out that they disabled enough to make it a lot worse than the G95.
Wow. That's awful.
Wow.
Jeez.
And we're in the situation where the Odin Lite was supposed to at least give you the G95. It doesn't make sense to use the D1000C if it's going to be worse because they could have just used the G95. There was actually a time for like 30 minutes where Odin Lite almost had the G95. It was like, it was really close there. I'm happy that they didn't because the G95 is garbage, but it almost happened.
That's so. I'm so happy to hear you say that, Taki, too, because I just canceled my GPD XP order. So I had weird vibes around that Helio chip, and I'm like, and the screen's too long. And anyways,
well, I mean, with the GPD XP, do you know what's going on within GPD right now? Why they would do something weird like the XP?
Yeah, why is Scott saying they're trash?
Scott, we've heard a lot of conjecture around GPD's corporate structure, in that they were started by people who were more passionate about gaming and handhelds and stuff, and then maybe were taken over by some people who were more business minded. Is that accurate at all? Is that something you can speak to at all?
For that company, I don't know who those original people would be that you're talking about. I do think that that people in GPD do play games. I think that's kind of like what you're getting at a little bit. I think that they must. Somebody does. But I did ask like their like customer service type people. I said, "Do you play?" Or I said, "Do you have a GPD device?" And he said, "No. We can buy one at a discount, but I don't own one. I can just play one at the office." So, I mean, that's kind of not the best thing to set at you. If you're working at a company like that, I think everybody at least that works there should have a device.
Yeah.
Because the more people that you have on it, the more input that you can get. So that was kind of like a red flag. I don't know about the people that you're talking about that founded it because I never had that conversation with them. I do know that they kind of get an idea, or somebody gets an idea of what they think is good, and they'll just go with it. And even if it's challenged, they won't stop whatever that idea is. And that's kind of what the XP is. I'm sure many people told them this is a terrible idea because they showcased it. They had a picture of it when he's holding it and it's red, and he's like, look at this thing I'm so proud about. And people are like, no, this is bad. And I don't know if at that picture it has the punch hole camera, but the funny part in hindsight now is they knew that they had lost this battle, so they just kind of did anything they could to attack anybody else with all kinds of bullshit, and they don't even care. To this day, they are still doing the bullshit. Every once in a while, somebody will send me a picture of their marketing director saying, now he's saying the D900 chips are secondhand. And I'm like, how could they be secondhand? It is so brand new. You would have to get a phone, use it for like 4 months, and then it became recycled. It would never happen.
What was
He's like, yeah, they're using recycled D900s.
They were talking about African 845s or something like
African,
that.
He said, this is, I mean, that's a bigger problem than anything else, because it really talks to how recycling in this industry is shit, because they just take used e-waste and send it to Africa, and then you have like poor kids like using all kinds of crazy chemicals to get valuable components off of PCBs. Right. It's not something to like laugh about, because it actually is a huge problem in the world right now. But that's not what's happening with these chips. You wouldn't be able to get them in any reasonable quantity of people recycling 845 phones. So it's just he can't say anything else. So he's just like, I have to say that they're recycled, because it's the biggest insult you could give to a company. But I think some companies like that will accuse people of things that they know that they're doing themselves. So it makes me think that it doesn't look obvious when you open up the GPD XP, but something could be recycled. That could use recycled RAM, which is actually easier to recycle than the main chipset, because you have a huge volume to choose from if you're trying to recycle a component like that versus the main chipset.
Well, maybe they have parts left over from the XD Plus or something like that. I don't know. I mean, they've had some great products. XD Plus in particular, I still enjoy. It's I think my favorite handheld to date. The Win 3 is pretty solid, but the XP, I don't know. If it was $100 cheaper, I feel like it'd be a little more solid for me. But that aspect ratio and that the whole concept seems just off.
I think the price now is the way it is because they had a price that they were going to sell it at. So let's say that price was $250, because that's what it was in China for the pre-order. And the pre-orders in China are not that significant, because you only have to pay $15 to reserve a pre-order. And if you want to pay when the pre-order time is up, you pay the full price of the discount. But if you don't, you just lose your $15. So your skin in the game is so small that you could just walk away from the $15. So I don't know if all of the people that pre-ordered in China were actually going to buy the full console, but I think they saw, based on that there weren't a lot of orders, and they kind of saw that there wasn't a lot of attention on their product from their YouTube videos that they were doing. So they sold the device at that $250 price tag that they were going to do for retail to resellers, and now resellers are marking it up to the $390 to $400 price.
It's too much for what you're getting. It's way
too much. But then you just need like one person to tell you this thing is amazing. It's the best thing that's in the world. And then people are like, is it?
Well, I mean, that's why I picked it up, because Fox's review on it was just glowing 10 out of 10 almost. And I'm like, man, maybe this is good. And then I had second thoughts a couple days later. I'm like, you know what? I don't need it. I don't want it.
There's things that they did that are decent, but none of those things add up to being a $400 product.
Right. Stateside, at least, we can compare that to, the PS5, the digital edition, or the Xbox Series S, and even a few other handhelds. I mean, picking up a Vita right now is $170 ish in perfect condition from Japan if you import it from on eBay, you know, and that compared to the XP and then some of the strangeness with it and then the drama around it and then it being $400 at the end of the day, plus having to wait for 3 to 6 weeks for it to get shipped over. Man, that's a lot. That's a big ask.
Yeah, I do believe they sold their. They must have had like an initial stock of a few thousand. I think they fulfilled whatever pre-orders they had in China from their campaign, and then just dumped the rest on resellers and gave them the ability to have a high profit margin. But I think those people are going to sit on those XPs for a long time.
Yeah.
There are problems with it that people still have not talked about, and it's been out and reviewed in so many different languages. And if you use it, you would just say, why did nobody talk about X? Why did nobody talk about Y?
Well, how come no one's talking about the R2 on the R2 being like halfway down the console? The L2 is like up here, and then the R2 is like an inch and a half down for some reason.
I think the only thing that's weird is on controllers that have that style. Like there's a FlyDigi controller that I really like, which has a lever where that is, and it doesn't seem weird because it's in a different direction, but the trigger down there is like, is this for my pinky? I'm not
right. What the fuck is this? And then the swap outs you can do, like the swap out for playing like MMOs and then arena shooters or whatever.
Seems nice when you think about it, and then when you actually use it and you know, the tactile nature of doing it it's not done well. I don't think that this would pass a check of a more established company.
Wasn't one of the add-ons designed for like MOBA games or something like that?
Yeah.
Why? I would just use my phone at that point, you know?
Well,
there is that.
At this point, I'm doing too much.
We've got the, you know, we've got the GameSir X2, which supposedly is fantastic. And I have a Kishi, which I enjoy. The buttons.
Or you got to get your X2, man.
I know. I got to quit screwing around. Which the buttons on the Kishi are okay. I know a lot of people have complaints about them. But man, just like we've talked about, having that dedicated gaming device is so needed for a lot of us, especially in the dad era, the dad range, you know?
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about notifications while we're playing games and stuff like that. We can just sit down and enjoy hopefully something from the GameCube era stably for this next generation. That's a pretty big jump. And Taki, yes. I know you've been doing a lot of videos with the MMJR2 build. Is that correct? Of Dolphin? Yeah. You can use
the official whenever you can use the MMJR2. You can use the official. It's just more annoying to test because there's things that you can do at a glance on the 2 that you can't do on the base. Right. So at that point, if I have to test more than one game, I'm not going to use the base one because it's not user friendly. You would think that the MMJ guy would do because he's already doing things that people don't like, that want like the purest Dolphin experience. I don't know. My philosophy is completely different on emulation. I would rather something work than try to be a purist when the hardware isn't even good to be a purist.
Right.
It's like it's kind of like for Super Nintendo. Like now we have BSNES.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we can have that because we also have an alternative that works very well if you have something low end. So we don't have anything low end for GameCube. So for that to be the only one we have, and for people to try to be this like purist about like what it should have and what it shouldn't have, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I can definitely get over something not being perfect emulation, you know, missing some textures here and there or something like that, as long as it runs full speed, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so I think I know what you're talking about with the purists, where they want it to be everything to be perfect.
They want it to be like cycle accurate. That's the kind of like the mentality, but it's not. So if you use like some kind of hack, like in the hacks options, they're like, we don't really want you to use it because it could break something. There's something actually very funny about Dolphin where you can have the resolutions go below 1x. So like somebody was saying it yesterday to me. They said, if you enable some option, it will do the GameCube boot logo. And if it does the boot logo, the game is running in 480p instead of 60 or whatever it is by default. And that alone, based on the things that I've done so far, is enough to have a meaningful impact on the gaming performance, because there's 20%? Some kind of textures that are less demanding when they're scaled down.
So that segues us right into the RP2 Plus, because that, now we're talking about GameCube on there. So you can probably use this option on that console in particular to really get max performance, right? Out of some of these harder to run GameCube games.
Yeah. For some stuff, it makes a big difference. Like the smoke effect in the Wind Waker. If you go to the place where you go get the girl and you have to fight the monster, she's hanging on the tree. Mm-hmm. If you go to that area, even on something decent like the i7S, it will chug when you're there. But if you lower the resolution just 10%, and you can't even see the difference, it does something to those smoke textures that makes it so less, like significantly less demanding. You can go from 4 FPS to full speed just from that.
That's crazy.
So when you see something like that, you would think, why is this not an official option? And then the word that you get is, oh, it breaks some games. It ruins some games. Okay, so for those games, you won't use it, but to not even have the option doesn't make any sense. Right. And I tested 179 games. And in all of those games, I found one game that was broken by doing this.
Really?
Which game?
Yeah, some SpongeBob game. If you lower the texture,
damn it, that's the one I wanted to play.
Yeah, they actually did a post about this on the official Dolphin a month ago or something like that, where there was a problem with this game. If you scaled up, it would break textures. The same thing happens if you scale down. It's the only game that I found that breaks when you scale down. And they will say, no, they tested it. This guy is an expert. He's been doing this for a long time, the lead developer, whatever. He's like, they know it breaks something. And I said, I cannot find the instances where something is broken from doing this. Yeah. And it just makes it easier to run.
That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. I've never heard that.
MMJR 2 mixed with this new performance resolution drop option, combine those two things on the RP2 Plus, we're going to have a good time. Because I know, what the resolution again on that is going to be 640 by 480.
So even 1X on Dolphin is too high for this screen.
No point. There's no point.
There's no point. You should be at least 0.9. And 0.9, playing that Zelda sequence is enough to make that game and that part very easy to play.
That's awesome. That's crazy.
I filmed the whole thing, so you can see. It shouldn't be able to do that well on that part, but it does, just because it's not at 1X.
It's crazy that the GameCube scaled like that at all, though. You know?
Does David know about this yet? Does Retroid know that their thing is going to be playing these games and with such performance?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like it was a very exciting time, because it was never supposed to play. It was maybe supposed to play like let's say like Luigi's Mansion.
Yeah.
1 year ago, it could do Luigi's Mansion on OpenGL. No, not on OpenGL. OpenGL at that time didn't work for Dolphin. It could use Vulkan 1.0, and the FPS was like 12. And we're like, all right, well, it's playable to somebody. It's playable to somebody, not to me, but at least it kind of works. So I never looked at it again after that. And then I tried with MMJR2, and somewhere between then and now, even the official Dolphin gives better performance than MMJ did back then.
Huh.
So they did make some improvements. They maybe like changed one thing that benefited PVR enough to make it decent.
Right.
And when I tried MMJ, I was like, wow, this performance is really great. So I'm like, what else could happen here? And I kept thinking, what if the resolutions can go lower than 1X? Because if they can go up, they must be able to go down.
Right.
So I tried to talk to the MMJ guy about it, and he said, I won't do this. I will not do this, because the leader of Dolphin said he tried it and it didn't work. I won't do it. And I said, I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. Your whole emulator is only used by people with bad hardware.
Right.
So if anything, you should have this option. He's like, I will not do it. You can do it yourself. He was like,
Okay.
kind of angry about it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do it myself. He said, don't expect anything, whatever. So I tested it and I was like, this is literally night and day. You can go from some games running like 3 FPS to now they're full speed.
That's insane.
Okay. What about Super Mario Sunshine? That game I can never get to run 60 FPS. Have you tried that?
It has an impact on Super Mario on Sunshine, but not like Zelda.
Okay. All right.
So this is what I do when I'm originally testing. I'll do 1x. I have a dev build where even 0.1x is implemented. So it's just doing 48p. So there's no demand on the GPU really at that point.
Yeah.
It kind of isolates that variable. So you can see how much is being taken off the table by the emulator being too demanding if you just drop it to 0.1x. So if 0.1x is garbage and every setting is enabled, then that game just cannot work. And Super Mario Sunshine is one of those games.
Ah, nuts. Well,
but you can have popular games like Resident Evil. Resident Evil on 1x could be something like 12 FPS in the intro sequence when you're just standing next to the car. And if you drop the resolution to like 0.7, it can be 25, 26. So it doesn't, sometimes it's like very beneficial and you can't really see a difference on a screen that's that small. That's the next thing.
Because it is still a 480p screen.
It's 480p and it's 3.5 inches. So when you're sitting away, you don't really know like this thing. And you could, I thought maybe you could do anti-aliasing on it and it would kind of compensate for some situations. What I did for the Wind Waker, I got an HD texture pack and applied the HD texture pack on all of the UI elements and then the ground textures. And then when you scale down, you are left with UI elements that look almost the same as they do at native 1x.
That's really cool. That's a really interesting idea. Cool.
I did like 4K or 8K textures for like the heart container and everything. And I looked at it and it actually does retain all of the value when it's scaled down as it does when it's native.
I think the community, because a lot of people are new. A lot of people, they're not tinkerers so much. They want something to just work. I think a lot of people would be really surprised how much these small singular settings affect performance on all these different games. And I'm not just talking even GameCube. I mean, even back to Saturn and Dreamcast and before, just one little teeny tiny setting can take you from 8 FPS to full speed in a heartbeat.
What people seem to want is these settings to be enabled by default. So when you boot up the device for the first time, have Dolphin MMJR2 pre-installed on it, maybe on the RP2 Plus, and have these settings preset. So it's going to be the best experience out of the box. And that's what I'm hopefully dreaming about for this release of their launcher.
The meme that is like plug and play has not really existed after we left the RG350 because there was nothing that you could really change except for a few settings. Once we moved over to 3326.
So yeah, I completely understand with 3326 devices. They do have a lot of set and forget, especially with the Linux custom firmware. It makes it a lot easier. But damn, the 3326 is so underpowered. I'm so glad to see that generation.
It's not ending yet.
But new devices,
it's not ending yet.
Yeah. But new,
was
it RGB 10 Max too?
Please no.
No. Even with that, it should not be done yet. The thing that started with the 3326 and it is going to continue going forward is you cannot get a set and forget device unless you buy an official product from Nintendo or PlayStation. It doesn't exist. And if you don't change a configuration option, you will get worse performance. The only way to make it, like you guys were talking about for GameCube, I have configured 178 games. So if I transferred my configuration directory and allowed anybody to use it, then you would have set and forget for GameCube. and it needs to be like that for every system, especially Nintendo 64.
Right.
Like if you use the Max 2 right now, the default resolution for GameCube for Dreamcast is a native resolution 480p, but you will get dog shit performance for Dreamcast on 3326 if you use 480p. You need to use 320. Yeah. Is it 320? Yeah, no, 240p. Sorry, 240p.
You got to run it half, basically.
Half. Yeah. Or you won't be able to play. So that's Dreamcast. Dreamcast really just has that one option. It's either real full resolution or half resolution. But for an N64, you can have so many different graphics profiles, 3 different emulators.
Yeah.
One emulator with one graphics profile is going to be the best option, and you have to hunt for it. If you just do the lazy thing, which would be to use Mupen GLS 2 or 3, and you set the graphics plugin to Rice, which is what I think is what you're going to see going forward, your picture quality will be garbage, even though the chip can probably support something a lot better. So we're not there. And if anything, there are more settings that you can change that are conflicting each other on Linux than there is on Android. You have the emulation station options, and then you have the RetroArch options, and then you have the standalone options, and they're all different. And
that's why it's confusing.
So I don't understand. Android is not the one that is the most complicated to do. So if every time somebody says that it's so easy for Linux, I'm like, it is only easy if you literally never changed anything and you didn't care that it was really bad. And if you're like that, you could get that same experience on Android. Just don't change anything.
Right. For 64 anyways, there's the new parallel core, some new changes to it. Do you like it compared to the Mupen GLS 3 core?
For Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, the parallel core is really good for things like 007 and Conquerors.
Yeah.
But for just like the average person that thinks that Linux is like set and forget, you need to go with Mupen and don't change the graphics profile at all, and just think that there's just too much left on the table if you don't change anything. And you already lose so much by having a limited set of emulators on Linux. So if like 845 is on Linux,
Stubbs and I,
you're fucked if you don't change settings.
That's what I'm an Android guy. I don't like
Stubbs and I are Android
settings.
boys.
It really just needs. It's doing people a disservice to tell them that, like I said, after 350, there has never been a Linux device that could be set and forget, because of how limited that device was, and there was nothing you could get by changing settings. It was what it was. Now even with 3399, if you do not change the settings for that, you are going to get significantly worse performance, and it's already worse than it is on Android, which is thankfully why they did dual boot for the 552.
Yeah, I've been talking to Anbernic for several months about the 552, and I've helped him a little bit with a couple of small things. I'm a little concerned about the 552's performance compared to like the RP3. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the same level because of the 3399.
So this is what I would say, because there's another guy that's always like, there's another Discord user that's always like sending me messages, and he's saying like, this one is not going to win because the processor blah blah. And I said, if the best processor dictated which one was the most successful, then Anbernic wouldn't sell any devices, because the 3326 running Linux is worse than even the 6580. It just, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So even if 3399 isn't better than the chip that's in the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, I don't think it matters, because people still buy it anyways, because it has the allure that it's easier to use, or that it boots up faster, even though it doesn't boot up faster. It's like marginally the same. Once you're on once you're on good hardware with an updated version of Android, the boot times are always right around 30 seconds or so, which should be good enough. How long are you really going to be turning on this device? If the low power consumption is good enough that you can sleep it all the time, you're never going to see that boot sequence. Although I do like the boot sequence on the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus with the Game Boy Advanced
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That was a nice last minute change. The original one was garbage, and that was changed like the day that I made that video. I was really happy with how it came out.
We saw a teaser forever ago about the RP3s.
Yeah. I still like that one too. But the problem with that is they have to figure out a way to make sound play with the animation file, and it should just be enough to have an MP4 file. They haven't really figured it out, but I have the Donkey Kong intro ripped as an MP3 to give them, and so they can try to get it to work, because it really just seems like fucking magic when you have it working all together.
Right. We got to learn a little bit of that fun making the boot logo for the 351 droid.
Yeah.
For the 351P and V. That was interesting. That was a challenge. I didn't realize the world of boot logos was so crazy.
Well, the big challenge there was getting the boot sequence correct to make sure it was accessing the files correctly.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So a while ago, we originally heard about the RP3, and then we heard about the possibility of the motherboard swap on the RP2 Plus, or people were calling the 2.5. And then that went away for a while. I mean, it sounds like that was a rumor that it went away. But do you know what happened there? What made them not only go forward with it, because they were talking about having to redo the shell because of the thermals, but also the 2.5 or 2 Plus coming out before the 3 now. Do you know what's going on with that?
The 2.5 was always supposed to come out before the 3, right? It was supposed to come out right around when it was talked about. And they basically had this mentality. I said, Retroid Pocket 2, the gap between Retroid Pocket 2 and 3 is too big. And if I buy a Retroid Pocket 2 and now all of a sudden you've made this big of a jump and I invest in this hardware, I'm going to feel like I just got fucked, because you've just left me with something that's significantly inferior to something I could have just paid a little bit more money and got a better version of. So I said, you should offer a PCB upgrade. I think a lot of people would be interested in it because the power is there and it makes it a lot better of a product. This is without thinking about doing any of the changes to the controls that they're doing. So they said, okay, sure. Right. This is the next thing that people get pissed off at me about. They're like, oh, he's teasing us about stuff all the time. I'm like, guys, I'm either telling you stuff because I want to force a company to do something that's the right thing to do, like to act in the best interests of the customers.
Yeah.
Almost always that's the case. Or they're too slow and I'm trying to push them into doing something. Or I'm gauging interest for something because I want them to do something that's beneficial to people, and the only way they can do it is if they see it has support. So for that one, I said, I think people are going to be interested in this. And they're like, we don't really know if people are going to be interested in this. And I was like, who the fuck wouldn't be interested in this? It's so powerful, and you can make it so cheap.
Everybody's loving this idea.
You can make it so cheap.
Everybody.
They're like, okay, you got to ask people about it. So then I asked people about it. And people said that they're interested. And I gave the price. I gave everything up front. I was like, it's going to be between $50 to $65. It has these features. They're like, what's the processor? Blah, blah. And I was like, it doesn't matter. It can do these things. Like, people are so fucking obsessed about what processors are. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It literally doesn't matter, because if I tell you what it is, you don't even know the chip. So if I just tell you it can do this, that's what it can do. So just judge it based on that. So then they said,
no, I was going to say, you touched on an interesting point. Like, people they're getting mad at you.
Jesus Christ. Like I can't do anything. I can't tell you what it is.
Why?
So stop.
No. That's why? Like, people get mad at YouTubers, but they get passionate.
Yeah, they get so fucking mad at me. And I'm like, I am not a bad guy in this situation.
I'm like, how do you deal with that backlash? How do you personally deal with it?
I just get so aggravated because people don't know what's in my heart. Like, they don't know the types of things that I've tried to do to move this market forward, because I do believe that we could have been in a situation where 4770 would have still been happening now. 3326 would have no reason to go away, because Odin I wouldn't have been able to talk a company into doing Odin, and the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus processor probably wouldn't have been this one. It could have been like some shit from Rockchip or something like that. So, and then trying to get companies to do right by their users, by doing PCB upgrades. So like it really doesn't like make sense whenever anybody tries to like say like you know, the person that I want to mention like changed his Discord name to be like attacking me for something about Odin. I don't make any money if anybody buys Odin, and I won't accept any money if anybody. I won't accept any money from the company if anybody buys Odin. I don't want to make money from Odin. I wanted the thing to exist because now, if you want to make a product, Odin is in the history. You
right,
and it should be better for everybody because they had so many years of just using really shitty ARM like 9 processors because people kept buying them. And as long as people keep buying them, with the exception of the Max 2 that I already said, it was in production before anybody bought the Max 1. If they keep getting sales, they will just change the shell, and then sell it to you again, and you'll keep buying it again, and then you will never get anything better.
Yeah, like we're
just
idiots as consumers. We'll just keep doing it.
It's more frustrating than you really know. Like anybody that knows me personally in real life knows that there's no shady shit. Like that's not like I am what you see. I mean, you don't see me right now because I don't have a video, but what you see and what I say is you can take it at face value. It's exactly there's no subtext for anything.
The admin started using a word for users and YouTubers that talk shit about other ones, and especially the ones that say that this guy's getting paid. He's getting paid. We start calling it shill casting, right? And that so when certain things were happening in RH, this guy's over here, he's shill casting, and man, ever since we started using that word, I see it everywhere, and not just toward you. You're definitely a pretty heavy victim of it, but I've seen so many YouTubers in comment sections and on Reddit and all that kind of stuff having to defend themselves because they're saying, I literally did not get paid for this. They sent me a test unit. I have to send it back.
But it seems like, and you, Taki, you cleared the air on this last year when you were on too, and you were saying, you really take the money that you do get from advertising and any sponsored links and put it for your son's college fund. And I thought that was pretty cool at the time. Is that still the case now? A year later?
Now. And I don't even look at it. So people say this is the bullshit. This is not my job. And they have this equation in their mind. They're like, if this is Taki's job, then he must need to do these things to guarantee that he gets income. And then when I say this is not my job, and I also do not need this money, what happens to your equation?
Right.
But that's too high thinking for them.
Yeah, there's always that person on the internet who just needs to be like, no, he's a shill. He's shilling a product. I don't trust it. And then he'll blah 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 blah. And it's like, how do you shut that person down? And I don't know quite how yet, other than have them join like the Discord and like get to know you personally.
You can't change the minds of those people. That's what it is.
Right.
There are people. Yeah. There are people that do get paid for doing product. There are products that have been like emailed to me, and they'll say like, you can review this thing. I'm not going to say what this thing is because I don't want to cause any drama.
Yeah.
But they'll say you can review this thing and you will get this much money. It's like they say compensation, and I know people take that compensation package. I don't even reply to those emails. And in some cases, they get pissed off at me. And one time I felt so bad. They were like, why have you not said anything back to this email? You are in this market. You should have said something about our product. I don't understand why you're ignoring us. And I just don't even answer. I don't even answer that message. But it actually like makes me feel bad. But then I see people do the videos on that product. So I know that there was money involved in that decision to do that coverage.
There's always, it's like that YouTube corruption or like that sponsorship. Like it feels like you're signing a deal with the devil or something. Like I mean, Thor and I turned over backwards for some Discord sweatshirts.
Yeah.
Those couple sponsored events, but there was no money exchange there. It's just like, hey, you're getting some swag, and yeah, you can promote your Discord on our partner Discord or whatever. And like, okay, it's cool for a nerd community like ours. That was like the big time for us, but
right. But we didn't have to throw out ads or anything like that either.
Yeah, and
the strange thing that I hate is when a major company will pay for an in-video ad from somebody that is supposed to be objective. Like Intel will pay for a promotional video that will get turned into some big production, and they will have the person read like a marketing line that says like blah blah, Intel is the best chip for blah blah. They've said that now.
Yeah.
So now later on they have to make a video. If that's not true from something that is like verifiable, where's their credibility? Because they'll basically just change it if anybody gives them money. And I see there's so much hypocrisy in the tech market.
Yeah.
So yeah, this got very far from the original PCB thing, but the PCB upgrade was supposed to just be to benefit users. The company.
Yeah, but it's extremely relevant because you're getting you have the PCB right now, right? And I said I've seen it plenty of times. Oh well, this guy's clearly getting paid. I mean, no, it doesn't. That doesn't necessarily mean it. You've got your YouTube channel, and like we just talked about, where that money goes. But other than that, I have device manufacturers just from BRB and running RH and all that, hunting me down to send me shit. Not money. But like they want me to have one of their things so we can make custom firmware for it or whatever. And it's gotten to the point to where we have to schedule it.
So we're getting the review units or the dev units and what have you now, but not for. There's never been any money involved in as far as like except for getting a free unit and then we pass it to our blogger Fox to review the unit and put up a review eventually.
Yeah.
But what do you call that? Like
it's marketing budget on the half of the company. Like what you have to realize is especially companies in China, they'll give you something for free because they don't do any marketing. So they'll give you something for free and they won't even think twice about that there was a cost associated with giving it out for free. They just don't care because they have thousands and thousands of them. For the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, there's only 4 PCBs, so it doesn't fit that situation. But
oh, I know what I was going to ask you about the RP2 Plus. Why did they go Unisoc instead of MTK?
The chip that they could have got for MTK when this was originally decided, the comparable MTK chips not only had a very high licensing fee, they also didn't have a good performance versus power consumption. So this one had a high fee, but the power consumption of it wasn't that bad.
So with that, the 3700 milliamp battery or 4K or whatever it is in there, so it'll last a lot longer than if they went like with a MediaTek P60 or P65 is what you're saying.
P60 was, or the P60 or P65 was hotter, if I remember correctly. It performs slightly better, but it costs like twice as much. So why would you use that chip if you're trying to make like a mass market product? So so to go back to what you were talking about of why things change. So after the initial message that I wrote asking if people were interested, that people got all fucking up in arms about, even though the end product that you are going to get is something that you cannot get from another company, because nobody would sell you a PCB, and especially not a PCB with this upgrade at this price. So it is really just let's make something to not lose any money. Let's try not to lose any money, but then give something to the fans that helped support the second product. So after they did that,
that's cool.
I was like, okay, cool. So you guys should be able to get this going in like a month or so. And then they kind of like just didn't do anything. They kind of just talked amongst each other. They're like, oh, we don't really think it's going to work. The heat is too much, blah, blah. And there's fears that this is another thing that people got mad at me for. There's fears that the PCB is going to be too hard to swap. Like maybe people will break it. So then I was like, that's
Mhm,
bullshit. It's so easy to just swap the PCB out. I'm going to teach my son how to do it. I'm going to film him doing it. So I filmed my son doing it. I sent it to the boss. I said, if my son can do it, he's doing it with my guidance. So it'd be the same thing as somebody watching a video. If my son can do it, and he can especially do the ribbon cable for the screen, there's no reason why somebody else shouldn't be able to do it. So after he saw that video, and then I did a teardown of the entire thing, replacing it, and I said you could do it in 7 minutes, because that's what I did when I showed it to them.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, what's this bullshit? His son doing it, blah, blah, blah. It really happened. The only reason why the PCB exists for you to buy is because I did that with my son. If I didn't do it, they weren't going to do the PCB upgrade. Because
that's cool. That's really
there's
saves
a
the
problem
day.
where people that have been doing something for a very long time at companies, they think that their voice is higher than anybody else just because they've been doing it for so long, but doesn't mean that they've been doing it well for a very long time. And especially when you're talking about something like these handheld gaming systems, they haven't existed for that long. So even if you've been doing it for 5 years, you could be shit at it for all of those 5 years. So they'll say something and they'll be like, my opinion is better than yours because I think that I know this better than you do. So when I made my son do the swap, then he's like, what can I say? If my son can do it and you're telling me that grown adults can't do it with a guide, there's something that's wrong with your opinion. So then they went back on it. So then they only had the heat issue. Now the heat issue is actually very funny.
Yeah.
This chip, I've been using it for over, let's say, like 14 months. I've been using this chip for 14 months in a phone that I bought last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I used it for that whole year, last year, all the way up until December, like every day. I would always use it. I had a GameSir controller connected to it, and I would just play like Android games on it. And I never once felt that this thing was hot. And when they were doing the Retroid Pocket 3 and the 2 Plus, they had this like strange issue where you could feel heat, and it didn't make any sense. And they went through all this effort to try to address it in the 3, which it is addressed. And one day I was looking at this, like really trying to understand why it is the phone is not hot, but the exact same hardware in a different device can be hotter. And it just came down to a structural engineering decision of where a chip should be placed, and that alone is enough to make the perception that this is hot. But if you just rejig some things around, the overall feeling is like 15 Celsius difference. It's still the same heat. It just is existing in a different place where you're not touching. And they had missed that fundamental design decision. And if they hadn't done that, then they would never have thought that the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus was so hot. So when we think about the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, there's a gap between the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus PCB and the battery. And the fear was that the processor would cook the battery. And that was a fear that I said. I was like, I don't think that you should do it. It's dangerous. But other companies will do this exact same design with the 3326. When the 3326 can get up to 70 Celsius, it is cooking the battery. But there's no protection in place. But it just seems to be an accepted practice. Now, the Retro Pocket 2 Plus doesn't get that hot. And the gap is high enough, the gap is thick enough between the battery and the processor that it doesn't, there's no problem at all. You can't even feel the heat on the back. So they were doing all kinds of
good.
They originally turned down the idea. They said it's too hot, and they based that decision. The person who told you guys about it that it was too hot just doesn't know what he's talking about, because he never actually tested the device thoroughly to know what is a normal temperature for this chip? He just took what some guy said and then ran with it. The guy that also made the wrong structural design decision. So, yeah,
that's funny.
So, I mean, you just make this one change and it's completely different. So, for the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus, they were going to go with they were deciding after they brought it back, after they originally brought back the idea of doing it. It was later on, and they were like, still, we're not really sure, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you already told people that you were going to do it. I'm not going to like do this bullshit where you ask me to tell people stuff or to gauge their opinion. Then you're like, I'm not going to do it, especially after people said that they would get it. Or I'm not going to say anything about your stuff anymore. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So they went.
Yeah, because it's like it's messenger or something.
And then people are like, oh, it doesn't happen. You said it was going to happen. Listen, if it didn't happen, it's not because I didn't try to get it to happen. Like they told me it was going to happen. If people were interested in it, they would do it. And people were interested in it. I don't know why they wouldn't do it. So they were going to underclock the chip, and up until the launch day, like a day before the launch day, they were compiling firmware for me to test. I was like, if you're going to underclock it, I need to see what's the impact of this, because I've never tested what this chip is like. And if I told people it could do XYZ thing 6 months ago or 5 months ago, it wasn't based on this new underclock. So I need to know if what I said is still true, because if it's not true, then don't do it, because I'm not going to be the person that lied to people and told them it could do something it can't. So they did the underclock.
Right.
And it made no difference. You couldn't even tell any difference at all. Like there was no less heat, no added heat. It's just still like, even running the thing full stack, you can't feel anything. It's not hot because of the gap between the processor and your hand. And even the battery temperature isn't hot.
Right. And this one actually has the standard SoC shielding that's on top of it, right? Yeah. So that's even more dissipation. The original Retroid Pocket 2 just had that little piece of, I think it was aluminum.
Just a ghetto piece of like black tape.
Super ghetto. Yeah.
And so this one is not coming to us underclocked, right? Just to clear up confusion. Okay. Good.
So when they did the underclock, they added some extra frequencies under the base frequencies of the 310, because the 310 actually has it's clocked too high at its lowest clock. And I was like, you should investigate adding lower clocks there, because it seems like it's running too high when you don't need it to be. So it could be like even more. It could have added energy efficiency. So they tried like messing around with it. And it worked for my test, but I was like, I don't believe that this is not going to have some undue consequence down the line that you didn't know would happen. So I was like, don't fuck around with this. If you guys don't know what you're doing, you just keep it at the stock. Yeah. That's what ended up happening. And I didn't want to go back and find out like what GC games wouldn't run, because I didn't test any of those GC games with an underclock. And I don't want to go back and test any of them again. It's so annoying. When this is what I want to do, because people are like, I didn't want anybody to say that I didn't try to actually test a ton of GameCube games. If I'm going to say it can do GameCube, even some GameCube, it's not going to be like, oh, it's some GameCube, you tested 5 games. No, I tested so many. So that way, when people make that comment, I can point you to the exact game that you think that you want to play, and I can tell you if it plays or not.
I did notice you went real hard on that one.
I went I went to 11 on testing that. There's only like 600 GameCube games, and most of them are, and the ones that I didn't test are like 17 versions of like a football game or something. I'm not going to test them all.
Right. I remember seeing in your server you having like a running tally and like notifying people, hey, I tested 30 games today or something like that.
Because I'm the type of person where if I find something like that where there was such a big change that happened where GameCube couldn't run, like I told you, Luigi's Mansion was in the teens, to it can now fully play. I'm like, how far can this go? How deep does this hole go? What can run?
So are you going to have like a community spreadsheet again, like you did with the first RP2, that'll have sort of these things for people to reference later on?
I think the default configuration is going to be for the games that run with nothing that needs to change. Those will also run with things that have been changed. So I think the default configuration on the Dolphin that they ship with will have the settings set to where the most things will run. And if you want things to look better or whatever, you can just change the scaling resolution up. But the base should be this would get all of the things that are on the listing as running to run. And then you can just change whatever you want.
Well, that's awesome.
Nice.
That's wonderful, wonderful news to hear. That's very exciting. Like we were talking about earlier, a lot of people seem to be under the impression that Android is for tweaking.
Oh my God, it's not for tweaking.
It's such a pain to set up, and
So here, let me tell you something. For the Max 2, I wanted to put the FPS meter in RetroArch on screen for some of the tests that I did. So I would enable the overlay and then I would save the configuration file. When I open up another game, even the exact same game, it's disabled again. I have to re-enable it again. It ignores this. It ignores it. And there's no other place that you can set it unless you were to open up the configuration file, the actual file on a computer, save it as enabled, and then make it read only. Wow. What kind of bullshit is that? You don't need to do that on Android.
That's a lot.
No, you don't.
Oh, that's good stuff.
And it's like this in the same vein as if you use Android, you're going to get input lag.
Oh my God, the input lag meme. The input lag meme. That's another thing that's high effort. That's another thing that's high effort that I want to put to bed. But it's just like it's like just so much effort. Do the slow motion camera, do all this bullshit, do the same thing on like an Anbernic device, show that they're basically the same.
Yeah.
Once you have a certain performance level and you can run a certain emulator, then you've eliminated most of the issues.
Yeah.
Or people that think that the GameCube emulator has, like, if I film it, they're like, Double Dash doesn't have that kind of, and yeah, it does. Go use the actual one. The wheels don't turn that fast.
Or they're like, oh, he's using Run Ahead. No, I can't use Run Ahead on GameCube.
My favorite is the random posting, like on Reddit and the Discords and stuff, where it's, I'm really sensitive to input lag. Is the RG351 better than the Retroid Pocket 2 because it has Android? And I'm just like, stop. You just please stop.
I can detect one
for the love of God,
millisecond of lag. If it is more than 1 millisecond, I'm going to die. You can't notice it. And it doesn't matter. Once you're enjoying the system, as long as the buttons are good and the performance is good, don't worry about these other shit. So you're just going to keep in the cycle. You'll just stay in the cycle of, I can only buy these chips. Yeah. And first of all, if you want to limit yourself to only buying a Linux handheld, you are going to have really bad hardware going forward, because Rockchip and Allwinner and Amlogic, they don't make very good chips for emulation, and they don't advance fast enough. So if you only want to limit yourself to those chips, you're going to have really bad handhelds, especially this year and next year and going forward. The gap is too large.
But Taki, how am I supposed to stream my Super Mario Brothers 3 runs from my RG351M if it doesn't have HDMI out? But wait, what about the input lag?
That is actually a sad thing that they never added HDMI to the 3326. There was a time when Retroid was when they were going to use 3326, and then someone at the company, the same person that said it was too hot without actually evaluating it, said that this chip is too hot and the power consumption is too crazy. Yet it never mattered for anybody that made all these handhelds for the last 2 years.
Yeah, nobody.
But Retroid would have enabled HDMI by having an FPGA, and these other companies don't. They're not really professional at doing FPGA, so they haven't added it because they don't want to take on the extra work for a small.
Retroid killed it with that FPGA. The only thing that maybe they could have worked on was making the resolution scale for it out, but only if they had a better SoC. Only if they had a better chip. Because that little 6580, I would never expect to get 1080p out of that damn thing.
It's actually impossible to do because that chip bridges from the screen. So whatever the screen resolution is what the output is.
Right.
So they can only stretch it, and it doesn't look that good stretched. But they could have just added the black bars, but they didn't do it.
Yeah.
The buffer stuff, though, is, and this is really technical, but the buffer stuff on that chip and with how the Retroid Pocket 2 ended up working was a big pain in the butt.
Yeah, I can imagine.
For the 552 is launching with Android.
Yeah, it's launching.
So hopefully that'll be a good experience for the users, and I think that might convert a lot more people over to the Android experience with the more efficient.
They know that the Linux side of that chip is worse for emulation than Android. Yeah, they do.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batocera is a solid experience, though. I mean, I dig that as far as Linux OSs go.
Doesn't work that well on ARM. It doesn't work that well on ARM.
Yeah.
You're talking about the software. That actually,
right.
That's actually another problem where we have people right now that they're okay with a company releasing like a device with shit software. This goes back to Odin, where I was telling people that they shouldn't buy it if the software is shit. If people have the expectation that the software is always going to be shit and they will still buy it, the company will never invest in improving their software. Yeah. Because they'll just know that some guy is going to he's going to work for them for free, change some firmware settings or whatever, make a new image, and then people will flash that new image, and then they're like, we didn't have to pay anybody to do that. This is amazing. We can make even more money now.
Powkiddy seems pretty guilty of that in general. Yeah. And their devices are so hit and miss. I really, really liked the RGB 10 Max, but other stuff, man, it just looks it either looks weird or it's underpowered, or it just doesn't seem like very good quality.
Hey man, my daughter loves her Powkiddy V6. It is an NES emulator that runs for years, okay? For years. She has yet to kill the battery on that thing. So, hey.
Powkiddy has a lot of stuff that they make
4-year-olds.
themselves, and then they have a lot of stuff that they just resell. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to find which one is being resold or which one is like done in-house. Like the X18S is done in-house. But I don't think that the V6 is.
I contacted Powkiddy several weeks ago via their Alley store. And I asked him specifically, like, why do you name your devices the way that you do? Because we were talking about it as developers, right? And they got back to me really quick. They were like, it's just a name. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, damn it.
Some actual importance to this. Yeah. No. And sometimes like a higher numbered one will have worse performance than a lowered one. It's always been something that I hated. I read that post and I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I never asked them either.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have that problem where people are kind of like green lighting companies doing real shit work on their software and making it acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable.
Yeah, we should demand better, I think.
We really should. We should demand better PS2 emulation. But first we need a better development team. Although Play is coming along, right?
I don't know about Play.
You're
probably going to see something else before you see Play get decent.
Me too. I added $1 to their Patreon.
I mean, I made the video to support them, but the gap, if you saw the gap between what they're trying to do and what other people are trying to do, there seems to be years between them.
Yeah.
And it really sucks that Damien PS2 is our best chance right now on Android, and that really sucks, but it's all we got that's actually playable
for now. Maybe next year there'll be something better.
I hope so. I know there's some community development going on for PCSX2, but for Windows on the Odin, right? Is that still going on? Do you know about that?
Yeah, can't comment on it. Can't comment on
it. Okay, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, yeah.
We finally hit a subject. All right. Thor, drill hard on that one.
I finally found it. I found the limit.
Taki, you were going to mention something about the Odin off air. I can't remember what did. You already cover what you wanted on that?
No, that would be about the heatsink and the 45 days. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. This heat drama, right?
So
yeah, what's going on with that?
So when they said that to the Chinese group, the 45-day thing, that was news to me.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, that was news to me, and because from what I've seen so far, I have a T1 shell in my house. I haven't used it. I've seen the T2 front shell. It fixed the things that I had seen in the T1 shell. There's only like a very small thing to change in the back shell. They fixed the LED. The LED, what's the material called? It takes the LED light and it just diffuses it. Yeah, the diffusing ring.
Yeah,
they improved that way more than I ever thought it was going to look in the latest version. Cool. So it seems like the mold is actually done, basically done like next week. So then you're like, okay, so November production, somebody could get a shipment in November. It seems reasonable.
Right.
But then
did they fix their speaker issue as well?
Yeah,
they were talking about having okay.
Well, here's the thing. They fix something that is not fixed in other devices. They just they fix things that are not fixed in other devices. Like
because they work directly with was it MediaTek or Qualcomm with that?
Qualcomm has special software that you need
A45?
to be able to configure the DSP, and it's proprietary, and you have to pay more money to use it. And they didn't pay that money, so they were like, "Can you guys do it for us?" And Qualcomm has this thing where you pay the $1 million or whatever to be able to use their chip. Yeah, it's very fucking expensive, like $1 or $2 million.
Holy shit!
To use their chip. Then you get the chip. You can buy the chip at a cheaper price, and you get support from the company. But then you also have to pay money for the support.
Wow.
You buy like these dollars, and then you can use those dollars on their website to get support. You get a ticket. You pay for your ticket. So they paid for the DSP change.
Yeah.
Wow.
They made 2 DSPs. The first one was decent, has more bass. I've made videos about it. The second one that they made is a little bit louder, has less bass, but more treble. So I said, both of these are really good. And if I only had one, I wouldn't know that one of them was bad and the other one was better. So I think you should just make like a DSP selector. One of them can be called bass, favor bass, and the other one can favor treble, and then people can choose. But both of those are much better than like anybody else's speakers. Just like on a verifiable, you could analyze the frequency range and you would know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the speakers are kind of an afterthought in a lot of these handhelds, it seems like.
Yeah.
Like the RGB 10 Max, they only put a mono speaker in, even on Gen 2. Like
so
they've taken care of the speaker
so the mold seems done,
but they're working on this.
The mold seems done. The speakers are done. The PCB orders were all made basically like 2 months ago, so those should have all been SMT'd by now, which means like they have the blank PCB. They just need to mount the RAM and the ROM, the RAM and the storage.
Right.
Yeah.
So those could have all happened. Those are like the big time sinks. There's the mold, the SMT. They already have the batteries. They have the screens. All of those can have high times. So when they say 45 days, I'm like, what the hell could be this long? And they're like, oh, so the heat sink can take like 20 days to fill an order of getting them made. So I'm like, okay, so even if it was 20 days from today, it's still people getting an order done this month. And then some other shit that I don't fully understand. The heatsink is the only thing that I could understand of what they were saying for this 45-day bullshit. But they wouldn't be in this kind of a situation right now if they had, done the evaluation of the heat sinks that they had earlier on. That they knew that they were probably going. First of all, anything can be better. If you want to improve anything, you can always try to make a product better. So if you look at what's the worst thing, because the performance threshold is so high on this, you could always improve cooling. So the only way that you're going to improve the cooling is if you change the fan. And if you change the fan, a lot of other variables change. They can change
if they don't want to change the fan, they can change the coolant that they're using, the thermal paste. They can change the material of the heatsink itself to aluminum, from aluminum to copper. But then you need to either change the placement of the fan or you need to use a bigger fan. Mm-hmm. So I found a fan on Taobao, and I saw that it could fit inside my device. So I was like, I think you guys can use this bigger fan if you can find a supplier for it. So they found a supplier for it. He came back. He gave them the bigger fan. Okay, cool. Now we need to get a heatsink produced so that way it can be evaluated to see if this makes any meaningful difference on our test case. And the test case that they were using was Genshin running with no thermal engine and the GPU fully overclocked and the CPU locked at its highest frequency. So I already know what that's like with the current fan because I've done that test so many times in the last 9 months.
What? Why didn't they go with
that
this
fan's
fan?
too sexy. I don't know. It's too sexy. The sex appeal on that fan. People don't know what you're holding, but you're holding the Game Boy style with the fan.
I know.
This is like where a video would be better.
The Game Boy fan, it's like a $5 fan handheld that can't stay charged for more than 5 minutes.
Problem,
but it's
that fan would probably be better because it's so huge. The problem with the big fan is it's also thicker, and the gap that you have available on the 845 is 6.5 millimeters from the top of the CPU die. The fan is 5 millimeters.
Okay.
You need at least 1 millimeter of gap. They say you need at least 1 millimeter gap on the top of the fan to have enough airflow. So if the fan moves from where it is, the best position for it to move is either on top of the CPU and then have the rest of the heatsink behind it, and then have some kind of air guide to go to the vent hole because the vent hole is on the left of the CPU. Or you put the fan in front of the vent hole and you attach a heat pipe from the top of the CPU to the front of the fan as a grill. So I said to them when they were meeting with a solutions provider to make the heatsink to do the design, I said, I think you really need to put the fan in front of the grill because it's the only place that has more than the gap that you need. It actually has a 7 millimeter gap, so you have a lot of room to work with there. So their company said, "Nah, I don't think it's going to work. The heat pipe can't bend at that kind of an angle or whatever. It's not going to work." And I said, well, I think you should really just try it because it's like a couple of dollars to do this test. And like, we'll know one way or the other that it's good or bad. So they didn't do that. They did some other shit where it stays in the exact position that it's in, more or less. And it has that rail that you saw, the guiding thing. I don't know what that's like because I've never tested it. I didn't ever test it. So I don't know if it's bad. I don't know how it compares to the one that I've filmed already. It doesn't seem like it would make that big of a difference. The fan from the big fan to the small fan, the gap is like 4 Celsius. So it's not really meaningful. So you go back to that design that they didn't do, either putting it on top of the CPU, they never did that, or putting it next to the air vent. They didn't try either one of those. I know that at least putting it on top of the CPU works well because I've used on-release handhelds that have done that style and it works out fine for them. And the funniest thing came just yesterday. I was looking at a picture of the GPD Pocket new computer that they have. If you looked at the Odin PCB and you looked at the PCB of this laptop, the placements of everything are almost exactly the same. So where they have the fan placed in relation to their CPU is exactly the same as it is on Odin. And they have a bent heat pipe, which is
heat pipe,
which is almost exactly how I had suggested that they do it. So if it can work for that, that 20-watt chip, it should definitely be able to work for Odin.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it because the guy that runs the company of the thermal solution, he's been doing this for 15 years. So the boss of AYN equates doing something for a long time as doing it well. And I told him there's a difference between experience and expertise. You can do something for a very long time and be very bad at it. and I would give him examples of
Right.
of things to prove that this has already happened in Odin for things that they had to fix. So I said, if it can work in GPD's product, it should definitely work for this, and that means that guy's opinion was bullshit, and you should have just tested it.
Yeah,
and they could have done that test 3 weeks ago, and they would have seen.
Oof.
My hypothesis is that it should work. Everything seems like get the fucking heat out of the device as fast as possible. Put the fan in the
right. And you got this like,
but they're all all kinds of bullshit.
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
this
oh,
slide.
the air vent isn't going to be on top of the fan. If we moved it to the front, it would be down more. And I would say, well, there's no air vent on the switched Lite, and it performs just as well. It's actually in the exact same position. They just have two small slits on the bottom, and Odin has those two small slits and a huge fucking hole. So it should have way more airflow than is possible on the switched Lite with this new change.
Yeah, the Switch Lite doesn't really get hot either. Even as
it can get to like
really...
the back shell can get to like 46 or 48 Celsius, which was like the passive cooling temperature on Odin when they made without using a fan and just doing normal stuff. So they didn't do that test that I had suggested, and they instead just did the wind tunnel, which I don't know if it's shit or not. Really, their test case is just Genshin. If you're not doing Genshin, you don't even need the fan to begin with. So it's just a moot point. But I'm of the impression if you're going to do anything, you should do it well. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. And this is something that could be done better than it is right now.
And you said you said that they had it clocked all the way up and playing Genshin, right?
If you clock it all the way up and you're playing Genshin, the CPU temperature, I don't know what they're using for. First of all, I don't know what they're using for this measurement. When I do the test, I read the sensor from the chip itself, but they also use diodes, and the diode temperature is meaningless to me because you're not going to diode everything. It's not the same. So their data shows that Genshin, in this static scene, you go to the first checkpoint. If you teleport there, you're looking in a specific direction. So if you do this test, it's repeatable to an extent. The heat is like 60 to 70 Celsius with the fan on full fucking stack. And the full stack fan is probably going to be like, you'll hear it. It's not quiet on full stack. It's not even the firmware doesn't even support full stack. It can go to like 30% of the full speed. So they're doing 100% balls to the wall, and that's what they're getting. But it just doesn't seem like that's the most efficient way to get the heat out, is to put the fan behind the processor, blow it over the top of it. It's just like farting on top of the processor and then hoping that you're gonna get something. But that's probably going to be the one that they'll go with, because they don't have time to do anything different. But it's been that way for a lot of this product, where somebody will do something because they think that it's the best thing to do on just their intuition, and they're always wrong. They're
without
always wrong.
it.
And I think people are okay with this currently. And again, like you were saying earlier, stop saying it, that we're okay with it. But I think people are mainly mad that they announced it on QQ and not on Indiegogo. That's where the pain was.
The guy that did that message on
QQ,
I guess he had asked his boss, I need to make a message to the people on QQ to tell them, because the QQ delivery time, I don't know, I haven't checked, but I think the delivery time in China was supposed to be November 15th, which doesn't even make sense for it to be that to begin with. I don't know why they picked that shit. So they need to be notified of when they'll get their order. So he said that message.
Right.
But again, if you look at all the variables, it doesn't seem like 45 days is reasonable. I just told you the heatsink, if it was started today, is just 20 days to make one. They have all of the other components. So they've had them for a long time. Nothing changed.
We still may get initial pre-orders by Christmas even.
I don't know. I
Yeah, that's I wouldn't project that.
I'm already like
there.
super disappointed that they dropped the ball this fucking hard on what was like such an easy thing to execute. That this I did something for this product that I didn't get to do in anything else, where I documented so much of it, and I was going to make a video about this, like a documentary of the entire product cycle.
Yeah,
because I have so many artifacts and everything, and there's a cool story here, but it's just taking so fucking long to to finish, and I didn't think that this would happen.
Well, I mean, I think there's definitely a market there. A lot of rabid Odin fans who would love to watch that, and just people in general who like to watch how things come together. I watch documentaries on subjects I have no idea about, but it's just interesting to know, like, oh, this, you have all these creative problems to solve. How does your team solve them? So that'd be interesting. And
I for one would definitely love an inside look at the actual production of these kinds of devices for the community. I think that'd be cool.
I think something this involved might not happen again in the future, because because it requires so much time. I don't know if it would take less time with a better team, but it takes so much work to bring a product this far with Android that I don't know if it's worth it at the end of the day. Because while Odin has been in production, Anbernic can make like 15 devices, but people still buy them all.
Right.
So I don't know that.
Yeah.
And people will accept worse. So if you just get a chip and you can power on the screen and you configure the controllers and you don't do anything else custom, it's so easy to do that. Because the D9000, the D900 at this point is like that. It doesn't have any of the custom Odin software. It's just an ASOP based image that the screen can work, and the buttons will probably work next week.
Mm-hmm.
If that's your barrier, you guys all know the Indiegogo started the day after they started working on the D900. So that's how long it takes to make a device when you don't do any custom software.
Right.
Is the software on the Odin and the RP2 Plus going to be shared in any sense because there's that family connection, or is they completely separate?
I think you told me that the launchers were completely separate, right? The Switch-like launchers?
The launchers are separate. The screen mapping technology is different. The way that the Retroid pulls input is completely different than Odin. And even the D900 will pull in a completely different way.
Yeah.
I'm more excited about, I still have to do the testing. Like I told you, I just got the board turned on with the screen. I want to see how hot this thing can get in the exact same workload with no fan, because my hypothesis is at least that this chip will generate way less heat. And I think that it should be good enough with just a heatsink, which is how I always envisioned that Odin would be. It would just be a fanless device, but then people wanted more and more and more and more.
Is the D900, is that a 7 nanometer chip?
I think it's either 8 or a 7 nanometer.
Okay. Because
did you just say nanometer?
Nanometer.
Nanometer?
Nanometer.
I was
How
like,
about that? Nanometer.
I'm more of a nanometer. Yeah. Sorry.
I think, and without going into chipset design and all that kind of stuff, the D900 is significantly more power efficient than like a Snapdragon 845. So
maybe I need to find out. Basically, I
Yeah.
know the variables for the Odin base with just the screen on. I know how much it can consume. I want to see exactly how much this consumes. I'm hoping that I see like a 200 milliamp difference. If I do, I'm going to be so happy, because that means that the battery life is going to be stupid good on the Odin Lite.
Good. Well, it'd be pretty crazy to get like a 6 to 8 hour battery.
It would.
out of something like that.
I want 12. I still
want
want to beat me. Well, my XD Plus does 12. So
if you want that, then you don't get your OLED screen that you love so much.
I know. I need to stop complaining, but I just want that one device. I'm on this hunt for that one device. Ultimately, I'm going to sell all my handhelds.
Odin almost had an Odin.
This generation.
I mentioned that before.
Wow.
But the screen is
that'd be
too small. It was 5.5.
Yeah.
Okay. 5.5 would be okay, but the price would probably jack up quite a ways.
Hey, I wouldn't be opposed to having a smaller Odin. All right. If I'm going to have any gripe with the thing, it's just that I can't put it in my pocket. That's it.
You're gonna have family infighting then, because you got the Retroid RP3 coming out, and
which
then
I'm crazy
Odin, and they're gonna be too much alike at that point, and the family will just not speak at Thanksgiving.
They keep sending mixed messages about the Retroid Pocket 3 too, which is so stupid. I've never heard of any company launching two products at the same time that compete against each other. It's so dumb. I was having a conversation.
Well, we had that.
I was having a conversation with
that patent thing come out.
I was having a conversation with the boss of Anbernic, and he was talking about, first of all, Anbernic. I mean, you guys know they release so many fucking handhelds, so a lot of those handhelds are in development at the exact same time. And and I got to see what that looks like, and it's like a well fucking oiled machine. If you see that team, like they're all doing, like everybody's doing shit. It's like, it's how I envision that the companies should be running. So he has like all of these devices, and he's like, he said, we're going to have a new device, like blah, 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 every blah, blah, blah months. I'm not going to say. And then he said, and then he said to me, obviously you don't want to like just release like too many things all at once, because then, you know, it gets too saturated. And I said, no, I know that. Yeah. Can you tell Retroid that? I don't think they know that.
Yeah, not at the same time, anyways. And it got a little crazy this year with Anbernic. I actually got pretty annoyed. I'm like, when the 300X came out, I'm like, what are you doing? This is why do we need this right now? And then Powkiddy turned around and they're like, oh, here's the Q20. You're like, what?
They have so much stuff in motion that doesn't even rely on the input of what people think. There's revisions of things that aren't released yet that have good revisions that nobody even evaluated the first product because it's unreleased. But this guy, that company is just so fucking forward thinking. You know, I would mention something to him and I would be like, oh, did you think about doing this? Like, and then he would laugh and he would say, it's already being done. And then he would you know, tell me, he'd be like, shh, don't tell anybody. They did a lot of really good stuff in some of their new, like a lot of things that I would personally have done, they did them. And it's just like amazing to see somebody like on the same wavelength as you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and their hardware is pristine. Every one. Really, the 300X is the only thing that stepped down for me because that damn glossy finish they have on it. And the Jay-Z chip that they put in it. It's like, I didn't get that, but a lot of these, like the MP even, is just so beautiful. Like the metallic blue is just, it feels good in the hand. Can't complain with the hardware.
Just the chips. Better chips, please.
And everybody wants internal Wi-Fi, of course.
Well, yeah. Well, Taki, dude, thank you so much for sitting down with us today and giving us 2 hours of your time. Man, oh man. We covered a lot of stuff tonight. And dude, thank you for your insight and just straightness. I appreciate it.
And more than that, thank you for sharing what's in your heart.
Thank you for sharing that small fan that you have on top of your Game Boy.
It's within reach, you know? It's right there.
Everything within reach. I got my, let's see if it's battery that's charged up. Oh, the battery's dead now. I wanted to.
The funny thing is when I was walking through, Anbernic has this huge factory, like warehouse. I was walking through and I was looking at one of the boxes and they had a Powkiddy device. They had like a box of Powkiddy stuff. And I was like, hey, why do you got Powkiddy stuff here? And then he went over and he picked it up and it was just like a portable battery. They have like a portable charger. He's like, oh, it's just a portable charger. We don't have their like real stuff here.
That's amazing. I mean, but how does Powkiddy know what Anbernic? I mean, they release their devices so close together. They must have like spies on the inside or something. I don't know what's going on. But it's all very interesting. And us being stateside, we all kind of just watch from the sidelines like, I don't know, but the goods are keep hitting the market, and we're just eating it up.
We're always on a 3-week delay to getting a device in our hands, you know?
Yeah, we're like addicted to the cycle now, you know? So
it is.
We're spoiled. We're spoiled, rotten.
We're so spoiled.
And we wouldn't have it any other way. So, again, man, thank you for coming on. Anything you want to plug before we go? People know your YouTube, youtube.com/C/Taki Udon. Taki Udon 2.
The teasing man. Guy always teasing stuff.
Yeah. That son of a bitch.
Teasy
Stop
Udon.
hyping us.
So ridiculous.
We got to have you on more. We got to just shoot the breeze more, and just so people get to continually realize, like, no, this is who Taki is. He's not just some like sinister behind the scenes YouTuber. Like, I'm going to get them so hyped, and then I'm going to get them blue balls, and it'll be hilarious.
Getting paid in AYN dollars, you know.
I think I did mention this last time, where when something is released and nobody else can use it, I also don't want to use it, because I can't bring myself to like enjoy something that I am the only one that can access, or only a few group that can access.
ZPG.
So when Odin finally does release, I think it would be good to do another one of these, because then we can do a rundown of more of the stuff, because it's an interesting story. If I do end up making the documentary on it, it's a really interesting story to know all of the whole thing.
Well, hell yeah, man. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we can't wait to hear. We want to dig into it. This has been a very fascinating episode. We got 2 hours, and I really don't think I'm going to cut much out of it. So
thank you all so much for listening in. We love you all. We love this community. We're very passionate about it. Taki, again, thank you so much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, guys.
We just want salsa LeBron all day, every day. Come on.
You need to stop saying shit like that. I'm serious.